Their broadcast is the worst. Okay, so I've talked about this a lot with respect to American imperialism, with respect to like patriotism. John Kerry being put forward against Bush as like the real patriot, or Amy McGrath going up against Mitch McConnell as the real patriot, and how stupid that is. If you concede to the reactionary talking points across the board, if you concede to the reactionary talking points like crimes being caused by like DAs that release fucking criminals into the street or whatever, you're never going to win that conversation, and all you're doing is basically legitimizing the underlying attitude, the underlying faulty premise that crime is being committed as a consequence of anything but the material conditions that people are subjected to. And that's really fucking stupid. And Democrats are doing it again. The adequate way to deal with the increase in crime right now is to, one, try to calm people down as best as possible by saying, listen, look at the numbers, look at the data. The data does not show, the FBI data and the crime data from these police departments itself does not actually show the hysteria that the media is trying to create. It's fucking fake news. Okay? But also, crime is not some random phenomena. It does not happen in a vacuum. It happens as a consequence of the material conditions that people are subjected to. There are plenty of examples of successfully tackling crime. The best way to do so, especially for the youth, for example, you got the Kia Boys everywhere. You got Kia Boys in Minnesota. You got Kia Boys in Florida now. They're using USBs to steal Kias, Kia Sorentos. So easy, they say. These are industrious children. They're bored. They got nothing going on in their lives. Milwaukee, bro. Sorry. They got nothing else going on. We got to keep these kids busy. We got to make sure that these 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, these brilliant kids, these beautiful kids that I love sitting on my lap playing with my leg hairs, need to find an adequate outlet to be able to exercise. We need these Kia Boys to play in leagues, to get lessons, learn to play a musical instrument. So, instead of trying to fucking genuinely say like, look, social programs actually absolutely work in tackling the crime rate. These kids need better safety nets, a better future. They need to work for a better future that we as in American society have failed to offer them. You know what I mean? Instead of doing all that shit, we're just trying to tackle it by becoming more draconian. And that's what the Republicans want. But we're not doing that. We're instead legitimizing the underlying faulty premise that crime is happening as a natural phenomena, and it's happening as a consequence of like some intrinsic factors at play here, specifically in black neighborhoods, which is an inherently racist attitude to have.
A district attorney in Northern California is sounding the alarm over the sheer amount of criminal suspects released, only to end up committing more crimes. And he's got some shocking numbers to back up his concerns. Jeff Reisig is the district attorney for Yolo County, California. He's also the president of the California District Attorneys Association. Jeff, great to talk to you and finally get some statistics and some hard numbers to put with the perception that a lot of people across this country have. In June of this year, your office started tracking which offenders released without bail.
I'm going to be honest, I don't even believe that for a second, the 70% recommitted. I don't even believe that for a fucking second. I'm sorry. Especially because we've seen people, first of all, this is no cash bail policies, which is different than like early release. Okay? And early release has been so fundamentally successful that out of 11,000 people that have been released early, okay, and that process is not as easy as the way Fox News presents it. It's not like, oh, are you a rapist murderer? Hello, go ahead. Oh, did you do 1 day in prison? Okay, time to release you. That's not how that works. It is a brutal process, regardless of the new new measures. Okay, regardless of the new measures that have been put in place. It's usually people that have served out 2/3 of their sentence. You know what I mean? Like 10 years out of a fucking 15-year sentence, for example. And they let them out in 10 instead of making them serve 15. And it's because they already have demonstrated good behavior. A process that is already inherently racist, a process that is already being looked at by a bunch of racist-ass, old-ass judges and shit, okay? Like, these guys, if they're being released early, it means that they have somehow been able to avoid, like, becoming a more hardened criminal in prison, which is something that you need to do to basically fucking survive in prison. Like, they've done the unimaginable. And that's precisely why, out of the 11,000 people that have been let out on early release, okay, out of the 11,000 people that have been let out on early release, only 17 have reoffended, and most of those are for drug charges, like parole violations, like you got tested, and you smoked weed, so you're going back to prison. 17 out of 11,000 prisoners that were released. 17. That recidivism rate is so fucking insanely marginal and tiny that it is a gangbusters program. It is probably the most successful program in that is the most successful criminal justice rehabilitation program on the planet, okay? Like, unimaginable. That's better than fucking Norway, dude. Okay? Literally. 17%? You think 17 people out of 11,000 is 17%? If it was 17%, that would still be worldwide, record-breaking low recidivism. But it's not 17%. Like 0.01%. Even if it was 17%, that would be like better than like Norwegian recidivism rates.
Bail went on to commit new crimes in Yolo, California. And here's what you find. Of the 595 individuals released,
0% or it's useless. Got to work on these reactionary takes, my man. You're joking, right? There is no system on the planet where there is like 0%. Why are you leftist losers jump? Oh yeah, he's joking. Okay, he said Dan Bon Jovi.
At least 420 were rearrested for new crimes. That's a 70.6% recidivism rate. And of those 103 offenders, 20% were rearrested for violent crimes, including murder, attempt murder, kidnapping, robbery, carjacking, and domestic violence. What did you think when you saw those numbers?
It's a staggering number. I mean, it shocks the conscience to think that many new crimes were committed by these people. Released on zero bail, and all of the new victims. That's what I thought about, all of the new victims who had been created as a result of this policy.
So how is it that those people ended up on the streets in the first place? Was it purely the guidelines of the California Judicial County? Was it the way that they were charged? What led to them getting back on the streets?
Right. Well, during 2020 and the first part of 2021, we were under a mandated zero bail policy because of court actions and local actions as well, not my choosing, but zero bail was the rage in California during the pandemic. And as a result, you had people.
Oh my God. Okay, listen. Part of the fucking reason part of the reason why they had this is because the California prison system is so insanely overcrowded. Okay, this is a problem that is caused by the very same issue that they're fucking on the other side of. All right. Like the reason why California was like, yeah, we got to fucking release some of these prisoners as a consequence of COVID was because like they were standing on top of one another. They were literally, the prisons are overcrowded in California. People think California is communism land, when in fact it's liberalism land, and liberalism is very reactionary, okay, and still arrests an insane amount of people. California's prisoner population is massive. California's prisoner per capita population is larger than most other countries on the planet. If California as an individual state was a nation state, it would still have some of the highest prisoner density on the planet. Obviously, this is the same for most of the United States of America. However, California is uniquely bad. Maybe not as bad as like Louisiana, but pretty fucking bad. And of course, a big chunk of that comes from the drastic economic inequality that people are subjected to in liberal safe havens like California. Okay? And the issue is that the prison system, which by the way you could learn more about, it sucks to like weirdly plug my take, but like I have a friend who actually went into he was in county jail. Come on, let's not compare ourselves to Louisiana. I mean, Louisiana is the worst of the worst on the planet. Like Angola is literally a plantation. So I don't know how else to describe it. Sup, dog, you calling out NOLA? I mean, dude, Louisiana is horrifyingly racist. Anywhere where there's a lot of black people, there's a lot of fucking white people that are trying to figure out new ways of jailing and enslaving those black people. And Louisiana is no different. So California prisons are fucking awful. California has 114,000 prisoners. Germany has 44,588. Yeah. So anyway, the California prison system is really awful. If you want personal details about it, I have a friend, Jeff Whittick, who actually went into LA County Jail and served a prison sentence there and was actually let out early as a consequence of COVID. And he goes through the steps of what you have to do to survive in prison in LA County Jail specifically. I talked about it with him on the podcast Fear and. It's a really good episode. It's unfortunately behind a paywall, but if you want to watch it, you can go to patreon.com/fear and you know, watch the video where he basically details like what he has done, what he had to do in prison to protect himself, and how like the prisoners basically ran the show within the jail. It's a gruesome and horrifying story in general. Luckily, he survived it, obviously. Per capita, California has over 500 prisoners for 100,000 people, whereas Germany has 70. Fascinating stuff. Yeah, real fascinating. And basically what I'm saying is the reason why California had to catch and release, or the reason why California had to implement these protocols, was because there's just not enough room, because the prisoner per capita population is incredibly high. Now, there's another problem here, though. And the other problem is a lot of people end up doing crimes again. Why? Because the underlying reasons as to why they did the crime in the first place has not changed. And then the solution to that person doing that kind of crime is never rehabilitation, but instead just putting him in a system that will force him to do even more crime and become an even more hardened criminal within the prison system in order to fucking survive. And then lastly, there are no alternative options once that person is released from jail that will allow them to bounce back and fix the underlying problems that they experienced So we are in this like incredible circumstance where our prisons are overflowing. Yeah, our prisons are overflowing. There is no way to solve some of the underlying material conditions as to why crime even happens. Okay, so then they just like fucking, they just decide like, oh, what's the most woke way to deal with this? The most liberal woke way to deal with it is the exact same way that we deal with homeless people. Okay? Which is, of course, hilariously, laughably brutal, which is, hey, look the other way. Let homeless people live on the street and eat trash and look the other way. That's the woke thing to do. God forbid we offer them housing. God forbid we have a housing first policy in dealing with homelessness and tackling this insane crisis. God forbid we normalize the housing market so that people aren't every day, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people aren't getting priced out of housing in places like California where their jobs are. You know, God forbid we do any of that. Just let them fucking live on the street and eat trash and come jerk off, outside of your house. Okay? That's the liberal solution. The Republican solution is just to murder them. And it sucks because there is an adequate solution that other countries have utilized. Vienna is a good example of this. Red Vienna. And European social democracies have great examples of this, where they do have better pricing for their housing. It's hilariously stupid when you put it into plain terms. This guy stole a car and sold it for drug money. How do we help him? Let's make it so that employers won't hire him into legit jobs and then repeatedly fine him for his drug addiction so he has massive debt that he can't pay off through legal means. That will help. Yeah. But ultimately, when you put that dude through the system, that dude is a slave. Now you have a slave for the remainder of his years. You know what I mean? He's in the system early on. He has no options. How the fuck is he going to overcome any of that stuff? He's not. So now he's in the system, and when you're in the system, you can go make license plates for a penny an hour. You know, it's great. You can go fight wildfires in California for 2 cents an hour. Would you be okay with housing for the homeless in your neighborhood? Yes, you fucking idiot. Why wouldn't I? I already house homeless people in this neighborhood. They're just living in a fucking tent. I would much rather have them live in a house. What kind of psychotic take is that? Yo, that only is a gotcha if you're just an inhumane piece of shit. You understand? Like, yeah, why wouldn't I be? Which one's better? Having the homeless people have shelter over their heads so they have basically one of their most profoundly important needs met so that they can get on a pathway to recovery and actually talk to social workers, be able to shower, be able to fucking look for jobs, have internet, electricity, have one of their needs met. Yeah, I would much prefer that to fucking living, to have them live in a fucking tent. To have an address too, that's huge. And for the record, before someone says, oh, why don't you put them in your house then? Like, motherfucker, I live in a house so I don't have to have roommates, okay? There's a difference between privacy. I don't want to have random people, whether they're homeless or not, living in my fucking house. So shut the fuck up. Not the same. But here it is. Police in these West Coast cities disproportionately arresting unhoused people from 2017 through 2020. Unhoused people made up almost an estimated 2% of the population in each of the following cities. However, they made up in Portland 50% of the people that were arrested. 50%. They were 2% of the population, but made up 50% of the people who were arrested. Sacramento, 42%. Los Angeles, 24%. San Diego, 11%. Oakland, 7%. What do you think is going on here? Huh? It's great. What do you mean? This doesn't take into account the proportion of crimes being committed, though, right? Brother, we live in an anti-homeless, anti-poor country, okay? We live in a capitalist country. Homeless people are not productive, okay? They're not productive workers. So the attitude of capital owners is that they should fucking die or go away or be converted into productive workers, possibly at gunpoint. So, yes, while some of those unhoused people that are getting arrested because they're like, doing public indecency. Some of that is also public indecency as a consequence of not having a place to fucking shit, right? No place for hygiene. Some of it is because they are mentally incredibly unwell, okay? And they need mental health treatment. And some of that is because they're just fucking brain broken from, their brains have been fried from like living out and subjecting themselves to the conditions of nature for many, many fucking years. And yes, they have violent outbursts. Yes, of course. Like valid reasons to arrest someone. Okay? Or there are, of course, valid reasons to arrest some homeless people, for sure. Okay? But a big chunk of the reason for why 50%, despite making up 2% of the population in the city, estimated 2% of the population, they make up 50%, is because there are laws written specifically that make it illegal to be homeless. There are valid reasons for why homeless people get incarcerated. Certainly, I'm not going to say that that's not the case. But there are infinitely more awful reasons why people jail homeless people. Anyway. So yeah, it's not an accident. There's also, for those of you who don't know, there is violent architecture, for example, or hostile architecture. Okay? That's how we deal with homeless people. With hostile architecture. Look at this. Look. I'm sure there's like good examples.
Buildings. Here. In 2005, sociologist Lance Hannon. Now, however, the Circle Line.
Okay, I just want to show one. Jesus. I just want one example.
Someone fed a coin. This was
this. This is an art installation. Sorry. You know how like
old waters?
Oh, if you recall, you know how when I went to Amsterdam, they had like weird spikes under bridges and shit, and I asked like, why do they have these weird spikes? And those spikes were so that birds couldn't fucking shit under the bridges. Because that shit would erode the bricks and whatnot. And they weren't real spikes. They just like basically made it so that birds could not stand on them. Okay? That exact same thing is how people, that exact same thing is what these cities do to homeless people. They create incredibly hostile architecture on purpose so that people can't sleep on the streets, on benches and whatnot. Like in New York, I believe they took out the benches in the, here it is. Yeah, after the government of Sao Paulo, Brazil installed rocks to prevent houses from resting under this bridge, a local priest decided to destroy them. Look at this. When you sit on a bench that's this size, that is by design. It's so that no one can sleep on it. When you see a bench that has this kind of thing in the middle of it, you're like, why does this have this thing in it? That's so that homeless people can't sleep on it. This is called hostile design, hostile architecture. The answer, of course, is not to make sure that like our benches are better so that homeless people can sleep on it. The answer, of course, is homes. What if we kissed at the pride-themed anti-homeless spike-covered underpass? Yeah. There it is. Wonderful. Good stuff. Every part of society is designed against homeless people. Every part of society is designed against people who have been priced out of the housing market, who are just trying to make ends meet, who are just trying to survive, who probably could if given the opportunity, if they didn't get priced out of the housing market and didn't have to live in their cars until they had to sell their cars and lose their job as a consequence of not having like hygienic products readily available, and to make themselves look presentable for jobs and whatnot, going down that trajectory of eventually becoming homeless and becoming like the worst case of homelessness, which is when you're also trying to self-medicate because you're in a horrifying situation. Your number one need is not being met. Okay? You don't have an address. You have no way of cleaning yourself up. You don't have clean clothes. You have no laundry machine. All these things that we take for granted. Living inside of homes and apartments and whatnot, they have no access to. That fucks you up. That breaks your fucking brain. To tier 3 homelessness the other day, and that really resonated with some normie friends I was chatting to about homelessness. Yeah, I've described this before. I call it 3 tiers of homelessness. I know it sounds like inhumane to describe it in such terms, but a lot of even chatters themselves have actually fucking gone through this. Okay? Tier 1 homelessness is the invisible homelessness. There are homeless people around you right now that are housing insecure that you don't even recognize. That is a person that has gotten priced out of the housing market but still has a job oftentimes. It is a person that has at least some material possessions that they've put in their car or are either doing that or couch surfing. Okay? They don't have a home, but they're couch surfing. They're living with someone else. As they look for, as they become more burdensome to people around them, and it becomes harder and harder to maintain a job. Okay? That's tier 1. Tier 2 homelessness is when you are living in your car, okay, and you lose your car basically, or you're living in your car and your car gets towed. You're living in your car and you get ticketed because there's a lot of anti-homelessness provisions that make it so that you can't even live in your fucking car, right? You have no consistent way of showering. You have no consistent way of cleaning your clothes. It becomes increasingly harder and harder for you to keep a job. You have no address. Sometimes you might not even have a bank account. You become tier 2 homeless in that situation. You've been priced out of the housing market, and now you have no means of recovery. And then you arrive at tier 3 homelessness, which oftentimes is when you have been living as a homeless person, as a houseless person for an extended period of time. You start doing drugs in order to self-medicate, to basically, cope with the reality that you have been served. Okay? And ultimately, throughout the different years of living through homelessness, you no longer have a means of, you no longer have a method of dealing with it. Your brain starts fucking frying. You have trauma. Because when you're tier 2 homeless, or even tier 1 homeless, or definitely in tier 3 homelessness, you're constantly getting assaulted. Okay? You're getting assaulted by the conditions of nature, which is the reason why, like, even fucking cavemen lived in goddamn caves. You know what I mean? You need shelter. You're constantly being assaulted by other people. whether it be other homeless people or other non-homeless people that are fucking beating the shit out of you, stealing your shit. This is a ongoing problem. If you're a woman, it's especially traumatic because there's also sexual assault on top of that. This happens inside of shelters even more frequently. Part of the reason why shelters are not an adequate solution. If you've ever talked to a homeless person, or if you've ever read about this sort of thing, you understand that shelters are really just not good at all. They're awful. People steal your shit. That is, if you're lucky enough to be able to bring your shit into the shelter, because shelters oftentimes will not allow you to bring any of your material possessions. Okay? They won't let you bring your pets. They won't let you bring your material possessions. And you have to be cold turkey. And going cold turkey is not exactly easy if you're already hooked on drugs. So a lot of people literally choose to, and then when you pair that up with assault, and when you pair that up with the likelihood of sexual assault and property theft, okay, all of a sudden, it seems better to sleep in a fucking tent than have a roof over your head when you're inside of a shelter. Okay? So you're making that bargain in your head year over year, okay? Then you're also taking drugs on the side. Your brain becomes completely fucking warped. Once you're on the third tier of homelessness, that is the type of homeless person that you regularly see in public and have negative experiences with, negative associations with. That's the lady with the hardened leather-looking skin that is half naked. You know what I mean? That's what people think about when they think about homeless people. That's the person that is the homeless person that is the most easily dehumanized by mainstream media. That's the homeless person that you probably had a negative association with. And that's part of the reason why you're like, oh no, we can't help these people. They're all on drugs. They're all crazy. And of course, that's the homeless person that is the hardest to deal with as well. That is the hardest to bring back into society. That's the hardest to heal. And no matter which tier of homelessness we're talking about, the most adequate way is to use a housing first policy. Immediately find them permanent shelter, okay? To give them a sense of autonomy, to help them regain their humanity. You can immediately tackle every tier 1 homeless person that way, immediately. Like, you have provided them with shelter, all of a sudden, boom, their problems are gone. Like, 99% of their problems are gone. Same with tier 2 homeless people, which might require a little bit more care in the form of like social workers helping them out. And same with tier 3 homeless people as well, with more adequate mental health checks and therapy, immediate therapy, and recovery and rehabilitation programs that are readily available for them, training programs after they have gone on a pathway to recovery. In that way, one, you create an entire new industry that is currently super underfunded. I mean, there is a capitalist alternative to this even, okay? It's just you take a short-term profit cut, okay? Your house is not going to be as expensive because now there's more houses that are readily available. If you're bought into the hospitality industry, maybe they took some of the motels and turned them into or converted them into housing, okay? But now there's a new industry working on this, the gigantic new industry that's working on it. Now, on top of that, the housing market will recover ultimately because there's no fucking homeless people in your neighborhood, okay, in the long term. And ultimately, it would be better for society as well. But of course, capitalism forces people into thinking in short-term benefits. So they can't do that, especially if there's any kind of fucking short-term profit loss. Oh my God, that is the worst thing you could ever advocate for. God forbid.
People who were being arrested for all types of crimes, including felonies, and being immediately arrested into the community with no supervision, no oversight, no mandated treatment, no ankle monitor, no conversation with the victims of their original crimes. They were just being dumped out of the jails. And that's the number that we have, 70% reoffended, some within days, most within 6 months.
Wow, it's just stunning when you look at those statistics. Now, the California Judicial Council, as you said, put into place this zero bail policy in April of 2020. They rescinded it in June of the same year, but some counties, including Yolo, held onto it for a while. Yolo ended it in June of 2021, but the effects continue. And then when you see these policies taking effect in other states across the nation, and so many of these offenders taking advantage of a revolving door of justice, committing crimes, getting released on zero bail, and then recommitting crimes. You know, as a district attorney, are you frustrated in seeing what some of your colleagues and people in positions of leadership are doing?
It's really outrageous to me. I mean, to watch this happen around the country in places like New York and other states, and right here in California, this movement by certain people to make zero bail the law is ongoing. As we speak, there are conversations going on in the state capitol, which is right next to my county in Sacramento, where they're trying to put this into the law again, even though the voters rejected it in California. They rejected zero bail in 2020. So this is bad policy. It's a get out of jail free card. People are getting really hurt, even murdered because of these policies, and we just need to scratch it. This is not a good policy.
All right, well, we'll see if these numbers now that we've got some hard figures, have any effect on other jurisdictions across the country. Jeff Reisig, thank you for joining us. We appreciate
it. It's great. Nothing better than Fox News talking about crime while showing us a supercut of r/public freakouts. Yeah. Wait, why are you so well versed in trans memes? Are you a chaser? I am not. Unfortunately for you. But nice try. When I ended my relationship, I was still living with my partner. I'm a foe. That's why. I learned everything about the trans community so I can be a more adequate foe. Yeah, know thy enemy. Portland homeless crisis is so fucking out of control. Make all drugs legal, but don't offer the mental health outreach programs that homeless people and substance abusers need. Yeah. It is really fucked up. Portland homeless crisis is very, very bad. The other states give their homeless one-way bus to get to Portland where drugs are decriminalized. The cops don't fuck with them. Non-profit government-operated homeless shelters get huge grants for being at max capacity. They get 10 million, scrape 2 mil, line their pockets, and then shove the homeless back out with no help or resources. Yep. Every part of the, listen, every part of the system that touches homeless people, which are the most, absolutely the most underserved population, oftentimes also predominantly black or Latino, like in fucking San Francisco, the Latino homeless population is insane, okay? Like, they conducted studies in the aftermath of COVID, and the Latino homeless population exploded in the Bay Area. Like, exploded in a way where people are like, what the fuck happened? We have no idea what's going on. Talk to people in Portland, and most of them don't want the homeless kicked out of there. We're tired of them. I know a lot of people say that. Because it seems as though there is no adequate way of dealing with homeless people. So the only adequate way of at least putting homeless people away or getting them away from your line of sight is by doing reactionary shit. I know why it's going on. It's because they wanted Latinos to be out of the Bay. Fuck tech yuppies. The two routes of dealing with homeless people is either addressing the root cause, poverty, or genocide. And in most American cities, we're choosing the genocide option. Yep. How do you get through the people who are reactionary when it comes to homelessness? I don't know. There are issues in America that impact the most underserved populations. Okay? There are issues that impact the most underserved populations in America, prisoners and homeless people. And whenever I bring that up and try to get chat to comprehend the terms of their humanity, I feel like I bring some people over to my side, but there are plenty of people who refuse to hear me out. It sucks. It's a very sad state of affairs, but Americans are not conditioned into fucking seeing the humanity of the prisoner population. They are certainly not conditioned into seeing the humanity of homeless people. This is a foreseeable byproduct of capitalist dogma. My dad says a lot of homeless people choose to be homeless. What do I say to that? I mean, I'm sorry to report this, but your dad's a fucking moron. And like, if he wasn't lucky, he probably would be homeless. Like, for a lot of people, that's what it is. It's just luck, intergenerational wealth and luck. There is no difference between your dad and a big chunk of homeless people that aren't even stupid like your dad is, by the way. They just got fucked over. But at least I can tell you, like, you know, there You definitely changed my mind and view on homeless people. I used to be extremely reactionary and think people chose to be homeless. Well, that's why I talk about, what about the drug addicted ones? I already described that to you. Drug addiction does happen in this country to people in homes too. You know that, right? There's a massive epidemic around fentanyl. Not just crack. Not just black people anymore. White people are addicted to drugs too. Remember, you know, if you want to find an issue that you can care about because the victims look like you, well, don't worry. White people are fucking drug addicts too. Guys making $300K a year love talking about some homeless guys actually making a ton of money out there panhandling. Such a good dumbass guy thing. Oh yeah. What? You bad take. There's an exception where someone pulls themselves up from nothing and makes something of themselves only dependent on the work they did and nothing else. And in the process, they become numb to the people who couldn't make it because of the work they had to do. Yeah, it's called survivor's bias. And you can still be a fucking dumbass for it. Yeah. Also, nobody made it by themselves. That's not a real concept. There is no such person on this planet that has made it by their own skill. Somewhere along the line, luck had to have happened to you. I work every fucking day for hours and hours and hours. A lot more hours that I put into streaming and a lot more hours off the camera that I put in to make sure that this stream is the way it is. But I would never for a second act like luck did not play a profound role in the position that I'm currently in. I didn't choose the affluent family that I was born into, which allowed me to, despite their financial predicaments later on in my life, allowed me to get a really solid education early on. Okay? I didn't know I was going to be able to 100% make it. You know what I mean? This personality that it developed over the years, it's crazy. Not a single person could say that luck has not factored into their lives.